Hello everyone and welcome back to QnA Wednesday with yours truly on my YouTube channel, All Things Taeler. So before we get started, I want to give a quick apology for my ratchetness appearance. I have been up all night. I was super just inspired working on another book. So I'm just super excited. It's going to be my first book that I'm going to be publishing for adults. So it will not be a children's book. And I was just so excited about it and just so in the moment that the next thing I knew it was, today. And so I have not slept. It's been insane. Just insane. So without further ado, let's get right into this week's Q&A Wednesday. Make sure you comment below, like, share, subscribe, and so we can keep these really fun Q&A Wednesdays going. And also let me know your thoughts about our Book of the Month Club for the Taeler Army. I am super excited about our book club, and the first book is a good one. Okay. So someone asked me here on my YouTube channel if I could actually tell anyone in life that if they face failure, they'll reach success or something like that, they were implying. I do actually believe that. I think that failure is a necessary step in climbing the ladder to success. A lot of the reasons why people will actually not go after their dreams and their goals is because they're afraid of failure and what other people will say. But what I have found is that a failure for me might actually look like a success to someone else. For example, some people say that my career is a failure and other people think I am very successful. So I think that it's very important for you, the individual, to define happiness and success for yourself. Because if you're going out into the world trying to fulfill everyone else's definition of happiness and success, you're going to live a life full of regret. And when I was in my mid-teens, I worked in a nursing home. I've seen the varying face of regret, and it's not a happy one. I've talked to a lot of elderly people throughout my life, and a lot of them have regret, and it all centers around, other people's expectations, doing what other people, told them to do instead of going after what they wanted to do. So then fast forward in my late teens and early 20s when I'm already wrestling and I'm a preschool teacher, I'm seeing firsthand what small minds do to dreamers. And that's why I always say we're all dreamers until we're taught not to. We all start off with these big dreams until we're told that they're unachievable and they're stupid, and you need to fit yourself into these boxes of checklists of a timeline of what you're supposed to, which career profile you're supposed to go after, because that's what society says is successful. You have to get married by this age, you have to have this body type, this skin color, you have to retire by this age, have this car, buy X amount of houses starting with a starter home, and and all this stuff. But in reality, it just life doesn't work that way. So I always feel that if you're afraid of a failure, then you're not going to succeed. You have to face failure in the face, and you find out who you truly are as a person, and you find out who you want to be in the world someday. So I think failure is a necessary thing. I think it's necessary because it also shows you how much you want something, how much you're willing to sacrifice and work hard for something. Anything easily gained is easily lost, and life is rough, so you have to be tough. If life was easy, everyone would do it. So you have to face failure. In prosperity, our friends know us. In adversity, we know our friends. And that's why, failure, I think, is necessary. Albert Einstein will tell you that. Well, he has, in quotes. Oprah Winfrey will tell you that. Failure isn't the be all end all. I think it's just life's way of showing you that there's another avenue that you can take, a different route to where you want to go. I think it was Edison. He didn't fail, 1,000 times. He just found 1,000 ways on how not to make a light bulb. Stuff like that I think is so inspiring. So don't be afraid of failure. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is extra. You have to be willing to do that extra that other people aren't willing to do if you want to achieve what other people don't have. Okay? You can't let other people's insecurities that they push onto you dictate your reality. It's not fair, and you'll never be happy. And I think people deserve to be happy and successful. And by doing that and being an example of that, we're going to make the world a better place than how we came into it. What's wrong with that? So that's what I would say to somebody who asks me if I could, in complete earnestness in life, tell anyone that if you face failure, you'll succeed. I think you have to face failure in order to know how much you want to succeed at something. All you need is love, guts, and gumption. And I tell you guys that all the time. Self-love to realize that you and your dreams matter. Guts to go after those dreams and to believe in yourself when no one else will. And then gumption to see those dreams through without sacrificing your integrity and learning along the way to cheer for yourself in the silence. That's the best thing that you can do and be an example of, because you never know who you're inspiring. Okay, before I become my own TED Talk, let's go into the next one. Someone also commented on my YouTube channel for QnA Wednesday, telling me that, Stone Cold recently had an interview where he discussed that he didn't like certain types of matches. I think the examples given in my question were triple threats and like four corners and four-way matches and stuff. And they asked me if I had any matches that I personally was not a fan of. I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling. Huge fan of it. I've tagged with Jessica Havoc. I've tagged with Scarlett Bordeaux. I've tagged with Chelsea Green. I've tagged with so many people. Alicia Edwards. I've been in 6 women tags. I've been in 4 corners survival matches. I think one of those was at Ring of Honor. Myself versus Kelly Klein versus Veda Scott versus Kimberly. I would probably say that I'm more a fan of tag team as opposed to 4 corners. And I think the reason why is because 4 ways or 4 corners, not all companies have the same rules. And sometimes they kind of don't really tell you what rules. Whoops. I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. My light just went out. There's a storm coming in. Okay. I apologize for this technical difficulty. Please work. Please work. Okay, here we go. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Tiny House on Wheels versus Storm. I think Mother Nature will win most of the time. Huge cold front coming in. Wow, that's really bright. Okay. I apologize. You guys just gotta roll with my with my weirdness. I do every day. Make myself laugh. So yeah, I would probably say 4 corners I'm not the biggest fan of because they tend to be a lot more spotty and a lot more things can go wrong and a lot of people going the deer in the headlights. I cannot stand deer in the headlights. I feel I am very much a pro at avoiding deer in the headlights. I learned the hard way because I had veterans beat the living daylights out of me very early on in my career, so that way I would never do that again, and I haven't. When stuff goes wrong, I'm like the queen of covering stuff up or calling out the fact that it was messed up. Like I remember one of my ladder matches in my career, I think I was in California, and I was like, well, she that up. The whole crowd was like, whoa, because I knew there was just I wasn't going to insult the fans in attendance because they could clearly see that the girl messed one of my signature moves up. So I wasn't going to act like it didn't happen. So I just played it off and I used it to my advantage. But yeah, I'm like a queen of avoiding deer in the headlights. There were so many times during like these spotty different things that were going on in matches at Ring of Honor where I was covering stuff up all the time. And I think that's a skill that was really, drilled into me and honed at Ohio Valley Wrestling. We were prepared for anything. That was part of our training with Rip Rogers. We learned, different training methods where, okay, your opponent's shoulder came out of the socket, so now their arm doesn't work, or the ropes just broke, so now you can't use the ropes at all. Person just got injured with their ankle, or all of a sudden, blah, blah, whatever the case may be. So for me, I think I would say 4 corners would definitely be, or a 4-way match, just because there's so much more spotty. There's so much more to remember. Your chemistry and timing has to be so spot on. Triple threat, you have a little bit more leeway, but it also, because there's less people, it also tends to give you a lag. What I mean by that is like sometimes people be waiting around for the next spot, and I hate that too. Like you always have to look busy. You can't just be like, I'm pretending to sell, but really the camera just got me waiting for my spot. I hate that. Can't stand it. So I'm always trying to move around and sell and like interact with the crowd until I know, Because when I'm doing one thing over here, I'm trying to get people to not pay attention to what's happening over here. It's like a magic trick sleight of hand. So I would have to say 4 ways, 4 corners, especially when the rules aren't necessarily established. But I love no DQ matches. I even had one of those against Ruby Riott back in the day. I like tournament style wrestling. I love tag team wrestling. I've been in a cage. I've gone through tables. I've taken chairs. I think the only thing I haven't, that I just really don't care for, but I've done it plenty of times and it's fine, is 4 corners. Oh, and 8-person tags. Those sometimes agitate me because when you don't have the same kind of training as other people, they get in and out of the ring in different ways when they get tagged in, and sometimes it trips people up and it looks sloppy. So that's another pet peeve of mine. Okay, so 4 corners and probably 8-person tags. Another person on my YouTube channel asked me about whether or not I felt that superstars, for example, in the WWE, turning heel and turning babyface every year, flip-flopping back and forth. They asked me whether or not I felt that that hurt the superstar themselves. And the answer is yes and no. It really all depends, because there's just some people that can't play a role. And so if you're paying them a salary and that role is not working out, you'd be kind of dumb to keep them in that role long term, because you're not going to see a return on your investment. And at the end of the day, the WWE is a company, so it needs to make money. And that's like the biggest thing, is a lot of us wrestlers don't have business training and marketing training. So some people get signed to WWE and have these huge egos from the indies, thinking that they know everything and they can do everything and they know better than a lot of higher ups, but it's really not the case. So I think that it really all depends on the superstar, you know, and it depends on who they're going up against too. You know, you wouldn't want to be that person that, oh, well, I was just heel last year and you guys just turned me babyface, but, if you guys turn me back heel again, I'm going to end up being in the main event in WrestleMania, but I just turned babyface, so I can't do that. That would be really silly to turn down that opportunity to go back to being a heel to be the main event at WrestleMania, in my fictitious example. So, like I said, it really all depends. And it also depends, too, on the superstar themselves. I think that, for example, they've done a lot of damage, I think, with, like, Natty and Dana Brooke, because of start and stop pushes that we've discussed on this YouTube channel. The starting to push somebody and then they drop it by the wayside, start them in a new gimmick, drop it by the wayside. Sometimes that can't, be avoided due to unforeseen injuries or, COVID infections or whatever. But then there's other times where there's no excuses. So I think the turning heel and babyface off and on over the years is less harmful than start and stop pushes. But like I said, it really all depends. They can absolutely be hurtful. I think the example they gave me was Elias and Charlotte. I love Charlotte as a heel personally, and I think she prefers to be a heel. But she is just so amazing. And I like the fact that people like to hate her, because that's money. It's like that Miz effect that we've talked about on this channel. I like it when people hate to love you or they love you. Both of those are just money. Let me see. Someone asked me to elaborate a little bit more on my ideas from last week's QnA Wednesday, where someone on my YouTube channel asked me what changes I would make if I were in an office position at WWE. So one of the things I mentioned was trimming the fat. If I have had somebody hired to, whether it's NXT or the main roster, for quite a few years and they're just not doing anything for me, I'm not seeing a return on the salary that I've paid them for X amount of years. You figure a base salary can be anywhere from like $25,000 to over $60K. I remember like 5 years ago, somebody was actually making like $45K, and versus somebody at TNA who was wrestling less was making almost $60. So it really all depends on the person's contract. But let's use that $45,000 a year guaranteed salary as an example, right? So say this person just really isn't getting over. They're really not, adapting to the WWE style for their brand, because you have to remember who you're signed with. It's WWE, so it doesn't really matter necessarily how you wrestled in the indies. You have to conform to the WWE brand. So if they're not conforming, they're not performing well, they're not translating from brand to brand on camera, and it's just not working, they're not connecting with an audience over a 3-year span, that's $45,000 times 3. Plus marketing, plus management, PR, on-staff lawyers. There's so much that goes into it. So I would trim the fat. And I would go through all of the rosters to do that. I wouldn't just, choose one brand as my scapegoat. I would trim the fat on everything. Another thing that I would do, and why, that I already mentioned, was I would downgrade the amount of pay-per-views. I think that less is more. So I would try to do 6 or less. To give more importance to the pay-per-views, more prestige back to the pay-per-views, make them mean more, and have the storylines building up mean more themselves. Because what goes up eventually has to go down. After you've been so hot for so long, you have to go down so that way you can make your way back up again and re-explode. That's how it works. So I think by having less pay-per-views, you're more able to do that. And you can take more time in building your superstars and building the storylines and having the revenue come in. Another thing I would do is I would cut my show back. I think 3 hours is a very long time. And what a lot of people don't realize that are pro wrestling fans themselves, they don't realize that a lot of WWE's audience is not technically pro wrestling fans, they're entertainment fans. So I think it's almost like a 75-25 or an 80-20 split. Whereas the majority is entertainment fans, and then the latter is pro wrestling fans. So when you're catering too much to pro wrestling fans, you're neglecting a vast majority of your audience. So I would start pivoting back towards my more profitable audience while still maintaining some favor with my pro wrestling audience, because at the end of the day, it's the WWE brand. And I need to, as a person, as an investor in the company, and as a person in the office, it would be part of my job to ensure ratings are going up and try to connect with my brand's audience in all of my demographics. And basically that's a fancy way of saying, know your role, shut your mouth, and understand what's going on. For WWE, a vast majority of their funding comes from their TV deal. So if your viewerships and your ratings are going down, that can, provide a real prickly relationship with your TV deal provider. And when that accounts for most of the salaries paid to your superstars, you would think that the superstars would be like, oh, well, maybe we should start doing something about that so we can ensure that we have jobs for decades to come. If a TV deal is lost, that's not going to be easily gotten back. So I would definitely also pay special attention to that TV deal and really cultivate it and nurture it like a little itty bitty baby. Because without that, it's a game changer. It really is. I would also start, doing more original content. They already started doing that with the WWE Network. So I think that was really cool to provide, because that also appeals to pro wrestling and entertainment fans. I would also try to introduce different types of training that would be mandatory at the Performance Center that didn't revolve around bumping. Over the last couple of years, we've seen injuries skyrocket, and that's several reasons. The increase in schedule, the demands of the matches, they're a lot more physical than they used to be, and the repetitiveness. There's a reason why athletes get arthritis way younger than the average person, and the lifespan of a pro athlete is shorter, as well as their career span is shorter than the average person. So I would definitely be taking more care of how my wrestlers are wrestling in the ring. I would definitely pay a lot more attention to that, and also provide them training at the Performance Center of what it means to be in the public eye, because this is not something taught in Pro Wrestling School 101. We're taught psychology on how to put matches together. If you go to a really great school like OVW, they'll teach you what it means to be on TV and how to work TV, which was amazing training that I got before I got my gut check. Invaluable, let me tell you. But what I would also like to provide them is what it means to be in the public eye. So what does that mean, guys? That means how my superstars should be dressing in public, how they should be conducting themselves in public when they're a representative of a publicly traded company, and also how they their social media presence, what that does to the company as a publicly traded company. Social media has the ability to do great things. It connects billions of people in seconds. That's immense power. But like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. If you are not using your social media well, that's a bad reflection of you as a superstar, but also you as a brand, because yes, you also have to think of yourself as a business when you're a WWE superstar, because you want to have a life after when you can't take bumps anymore. How do you do that? By making yourself not just a person, but also a business, a brand. a cohesive brand, and you're a representative of a publicly traded company. If you do something so dastardly, so bad, you could be the person that starts the cascading downfall of an entire company, which could collapse an entire industry. That's a lot of pressure that us as superstars are not taught openly. That's just something I've had to learn for myself over time by educating myself on things that, you know, I wanted to learn, to understand, to get a better grasp on, to be better in all aspects, which is self-improvement. So that is something I would make mandatory at the performance center. I would and I would also kind of not just make that mandatory, but also make sure that that's being implemented, because social media, you have little 7-year-old girls and boys looking up to this business as a dream, but how it's portrayed through social media and through TV is not the actual existence of it. It's like what I always say on my podcast and on this YouTube channel. The pro wrestling industry, the perfect analogy for it is in The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy and her friends finally make it to the Emerald City, right? And they think that they're going to get a brain, a heart, courage, and for her to go home. They ask for these things. They've battled all kinds of things, overcome all these obstacles, and they get there, and the great and powerful Oz is a jerk. And then you peel back the curtain, thanks to Toto, and you realize that the great, almighty, powerful Oz is just a bitter old man with a keyboard. That is the pro wrestling industry. It sucks the life out of childhood dreams if you allow it to. That's why so many people enter the business loving it and leave it hating it. But it does not have to be that way. It's been like that for decades, but it doesn't have to be that way. And it all starts with understanding your worth. If you're a superstar who gets mad that Goldberg got brought back for ratings and for all this other stuff, then ask yourself, what are you doing to make yourself more valuable to the company? What are you doing as a WWE superstar to get yourself more over than Goldberg? What are you doing that if you were put against Goldberg for that same position, how would you outperform him in ratings, in viewerships, in clicks, in merchandise, and everything else? If the answer is I don't know, then you don't deserve the spot. If the answer is I don't know, I'm a great wrestler, well, if that was enough, then you would have that spot. So I think there needs to be more education on that, because yeah, it might take some power away from the higher ups who are like the people sprinkling the magic over the cauldron, so to speak, but it also long term will provide them more value once all these people that they rely on for ratings, when the ratings are down, can't do it anymore. You know, there's a reason why there's only one John Cena, there's only one The Rock, there's only one, you know, Ultimate Warrior, there's only one Goldberg, there's only one Undertaker, you know, one Stone Cold Steve Austin, only one Kurt Angle. Okay, we can still have those types of people, but we have to change the system a bit to create more. And so those are some of the changes that I felt I could elaborate on for you guys, to give you guys kind of a different perspective of the inner workings and intricacies that I briefly touched on last week's QnA Wednesday and on my podcast talks with Taeler Hendrix on russosbrand.com. I'm very interested and immersed in the inner workings of how these types of things work. From the office all the way down through production, I have experienced it all. So those are the questions for this week's Q&A. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please comment below with more questions for next week, and we will keep this train going with as many questions. Please bring it on. I want to see music questions and acting questions and comic book questions, life questions, writing, acting, music, whatever, cooking. Let's talk about it all. Until next week, everybody. Thank you.